Welcome to a world of absolute horror. 300 million years ago, the air was thick, the forests were endless, and insects grew larger than your average neighbor's noisy, aggressive dog. Our story begins as the continents slowly collided, merging to create the mighty supercontinent of Pangea. This massive, crowded landmass formed the ultimate hostile stage for evolutionary madness to unfold on Earth. At the equator, massive, sweltering swamp forests stretched endlessly. This humid, muddy wetland was a complete paradise for moisture-loving creatures, though human tourists would have found it incredibly damp and stinky. Back then, our planet was running on a completely different setting. The atmosphere was saturated with oxygen, reaching 35% compared to today's modest and comfortable 21%. Colossal, branchless scale trees, known as Lepidodendron, towered 50 meters high. They were not structurally real trees, but rather giant, glorified club mosses, held up primarily by thick, spongy, water-rich bark. When these strange, vertical plants died, they simply fell into the water. Crucially, wood-eating bacteria and fungi had not yet evolved to decompose the incredibly tough substance that we call lignin. Without decay, layers of dead vegetation accumulated under immense geological pressure. Over millions of years, this unrotted biomass compressed to form the massive, dark coal seams that power our modern industrial world. Because these massive forests were photosynthesizing rapidly without decomposing, oxygen levels soared. The atmosphere became a highly flammable playground, where lightning storms could ignite the entire landscape into a blazing furnace. Indeed, terrifying wildfires raged regularly across the primeval wetlands. The high oxygen made even damp wood burn with explosive fury, leaving behind blackened, charred trunks across a smoking, highly apocalyptic landscape. But this massive oxygen overload had another shocking consequence. It unlocked the physiological barriers to growth for ancient invertebrates, who breathe passively through a branching network of tubes called the trachea. Furthermore, these giant bugs faced absolutely no competition. Birds, bats, and flying reptiles did not exist yet, leaving the primeval skies completely empty for these creepy crawlies to conquer and rule. Crawling out of this evolutionary nightmare was Arthropleura, a gargantuan millipede relative. Measuring up to 8.5 feet long, it was officially the largest terrestrial invertebrate ever discovered. Despite its horrifying size and intimidating tank-like armor, Arthropleura was actually a peaceful herbivore. It spent its days slowly grinding through fallen fern fronds and decaying scaled tree bark cushions. In 2018, a massive sandstone block fell from a cliff in Northumberland, England. It revealed a fossilized Arthropleura segment so incredibly large it implied a body length of over 8 feet. Remarkably, for over 170 years, no Arthropleura head had ever been found. That changed in 2024, when micro-CT scans of French fossils finally revealed its detailed face. The scans shocked paleontologists worldwide. While the creature possessed a classic millipede body, its head featured a highly bizarre mix of characters, looking distinctly like a terrifying, monstrous centipede's face. If Arthropleura owned the ground, Meganeura absolutely ruled the skies. This colossal dragonfly relative had a wingspan of over 2 feet, making it comparable in size to a predatory hawk. With no aerial competitors, Meganeura was an unstoppable, hyper-efficient predator. It flew at speeds of over 40 miles per hour, snatching other flying insects directly out of the misty air. This giant aerial hunter possessed a truly monstrous appetite. Fossil evidence and comparisons suggest Meganeura ate its own weight in food every 30 minutes, consuming everything in its bloody path. To catch its prey, Meganeura used a terrifying hunting weapon. Its powerful legs were covered in sharp, wicked spines, forming a cage-like trap that snatched victims mid-flight with absolute precision. However, flying such a massive body came with major physiological risks. Meganeura could easily overheat during prolonged high-speed chases, forcing it to take regular resting breaks on high branches. Descending back into the dark undergrowth, we find Pulmonoscorpius, the breath scorpion. This ancient nightmare grew to over 2 feet long, making it about the size of a fat house cat. Unlike modern scorpions that are nearly blind, Pulmonoscorpius had fantastic vision. It possessed 2 pairs of eyes, median eyes for spatial perception, and lateral eyes for detecting light and movement. It was a highly active, nocturnal predator. Pulmonoscorpius would clamp onto small amphibians or reptiles with its powerful claws before delivering a devastating, venomous sting from its massive, curved tail. While modern scorpions prefer hot deserts, Pulmonoscorpius was perfectly adapted to the wet Carboniferous swamps. It navigated the slippery mud and mossy logs with ease, hunting anything it could overpower. Floating above were Paleodictyoptera, giant six-winged plant feeders. They had a wingspan over a foot and used sharp mouth parts to pierce tough tree bark and extract nutritious plant sap. But the arthropod madness didn't stop on land. The waters harbored Eurypterids, or sea scorpions, like Hibbertopterus. Growing over 5 feet long, this heavy giant looked like a monstrous armored shrimp. Fascinatingly, fossil trackways in Scotland prove that Hibbertopterus could actually crawl out onto dry land. It dragged its heavy, armored body across the muddy beaches, breathing through specialized wet gills. Hibbertopterus used a unique feeding method called sweep feeding. Its front limbs were covered in sensory spines, which it used like a rake to sift through mud for soft-bodied mollusks. But the absolute king of the sea scorpions was Jaekelopterus, which lived slightly earlier. Reaching 8.5 feet long, it possessed massive, bone-crushing claws over a foot long. Moving to Mason Creek, Illinois, we encounter the Tully monster, a bizarre, soft-bodied misfit. Measuring a foot long, its alien appearance has baffled and horrified paleontologists for many decades. This creature was truly preposterous. It possessed eyes mounted on long, rigid stalks extending sideways and a flexible, trunk-like proboscis ending in a claw-like mouth filled with tiny, sharp teeth. Its classification remains a heated debate. Scientists cannot agree if it was a mollusk, a worm, or a primitive vertebrate, making it one of the most successful freaks in geological history. Despite being an absolute evolutionary misfit, the Tully monster is highly celebrated. In 1989, it was officially designated as the state fossil of Illinois, appearing on local yellow rental trucks. Now dive into the ancient seas, which were dominated by bizarre experimental sharks. Stethecanthus was a 3-foot predator featuring a shocking anvil-shaped dorsal fin covered in tiny, sharp teeth. Only males possess this bizarre ironing board, known as the spine brush complex. Scientists speculate it acted as a mating docking mechanism or perhaps intimidated larger predators by mimicking a giant mouth. But Stethecanthus was entirely outclassed in terror by Adestus, the scissor-tooth shark. Reaching over 22 feet long, its central curved tooth whorls protruded from its mouth like monstrous pinking shears. Adestus never shed its teeth. Instead, new teeth grew at the back of the curved jaw whorl, slowly pushing the older, worn teeth forward on a continuous conveyor belt of absolute doom. Scientists believe Adestus used its bizarre vertical jaws like giant shears. It would slice through smaller fish and soft-bodied marine animals with a vertical sawing motion of its curved teeth. If you sought refuge in freshwater rivers, you would meet Orthocanthus. This 10-foot freshwater shark had an eel-like body and a venomous, straight spine growing directly from its head. With an elongated body, Orthocanthus was a highly agile ambush predator. It concealed itself in stagnant swamp channels, striking suddenly to impale fish and early amphibians on its sharp teeth. But the absolute worst aquatic nightmare was Rhizodus. This colossal lobe-finned fish grew over 18 feet long and weighed more than a ton, ruling the freshwater swamps with unmatched power. Rhizodus possessed a set of truly horrifying 9-inch fangs positioned at the front of its powerful jaws. These massive daggers could easily impale and crush the largest Carboniferous amphibians. Terrifyingly, scientists believe Rhizodus could use its muscular lobe fins to launch itself onto the muddy riverbanks. It would snatch unsuspecting terrestrial animals, dragging them back into the watery depths. While giant amphibians dominated the waterways, our tiny lizard-like ancestors were quietly making history on land. Hylonomus emerged as the oldest undisputed reptile, measuring just about 8 inches long. Hylonomus possessed a revolutionary evolutionary superpower. It laid the very first amniotic eggs, featuring a protective, leathery shell that trapped water inside, allowing reproduction completely away from wet, swampy pools. This tiny, leathery sphere completely broke the chains binding vertebrates to the water. Reptiles could now colonize dry, inland environments, leaving the moisture-dependent amphibians stuck in their shrinking swamps. Alongside early reptiles, the ancestor of all mammals emerged. Archaeothrys was a 20-inch synapsid possessing a single skull opening behind its eyes and a pair of sharp, enlarged canine teeth. Soon, the bizarre sailbacked Edaphosaurus arrived. This hefty synapsid was one of the oldest known land-dwelling herbivores, using its massive back sail as an early form of temperature regulation. But this green oxygen-rich paradise could not last forever. Around 305 million years ago, a shifting global climate triggered a devastating event known as the famous Carboniferous rainforest collapse. Vast, humid swamps dried up rapidly as glaciers expanded at the South Pole. The continuous, majestic equatorial forests fragmented into isolated pockets, changing the global landscape and weather patterns forever. While giant bugs suffocated in the dropping oxygen and amphibians dwindled, reptiles thrived. Freed from the water, they conquered the dry New World, beginning a dynasty that still continues today.
Thanks for watching. If you found this interesting, click like and follow.